All right, today we're going to go over the installation and sampling protocol for doing the time series sampling for WHONDRS. So you're going to get a push point samplers like this. You can see there's a sock over the end. So you're going to choose your location. You want to install the push point in a location that's going to be inundated for the entire duration of the 2-day sampling. So sometimes you got to poke around, try to get it in there. Alright, so that's installed. You want to install it so that the handle here is touching the riverbed, so it's all the way in. So at this point, you can pull out the support rod. It's critical that the support rod is inside when you install the push point, otherwise the end will bend and break. So you also receive 2 other push points, so 3 in total. What you want to do is after you get the first one installed, come 2 meters downstream and install a second push point there, and then go 2 meters upstream and install another push point in a parallel line, or parallel to flow. After you pull the support rod out of the push point, then you want to measure the distance from the riverbed to the top of the push point. Get that number, record it on your hard copy data sheet, and then measure the distance between the push points. So they should be about 2 meters apart. Record that distance between the middle and the downstream, as well as between the middle and the upstream push points. And record those values on your hard copy data sheet. After you've recorded the distances between your push points, you want to get your GPS coordinates. Here we're just using an iPhone with the app My GPS Coordinates. You could use normal GPS or other methods. You want to record in decimal degrees here on the hard copy data sheet. If you have a hobo logger as part of your sampling gear, what you want to do is after you install your push points, zip tie or otherwise attach the hobo logger to the middle push point at the top. There's a nice hole at the top of the hobo logger for easy attachment. The sensing part of the hobo is down here. You want that part put out towards the middle of the channel. Also record the time when you put the hobo into the water. We will launch the logger before we send it to you, so we'll already be collecting data. The tubing here, the white tubing, is what will be used to pull the sample from the push point into your syringe. The soft tubing at the tip is what's used to connect onto the push point. This will be installed into the ground. What you'll do is you'll take the soft tubing and work it over the top of the push point and work it down so that the white tubing is as close as possible to the top of the push point. And then you'll zip tie right here to get a good connection to seal off. This is the tubing that's going to be used to sample surface water. You take this tubing and zip tie it onto the top part of the push point, the middle push point that's been installed, right where the handle makes it a cross or an elbow. And the key aspect here is you don't want the sock to be right in the sediment. You want to get it off the ground a little bit so it's sampling water instead of just sediment. After you've got your surface water tube zip tied onto your middle push point, then you're going to run your tubing up the bank to a location that will be above the water during the whole time course of the study. So also make sure you keep track of which tube is going to your push point and which tube is going to your surface water. You run it up the bank. And then temporarily secure it with a sandbag that we'll provide. Yours will be smaller than these. You can fill it with sand or sediment from your local site. And then you want to come back and secure the tubing in place along the run. So in this case we have a pretty short run. Some systems might be much longer than this. We'll provide plenty of tubing for you to go the whole run, including as well as plenty of sandbags to weight it down the whole length. After you've secured your middle lines, attach tubing to the other two push points and run them up to the same central location, weighting those down along the way with sandbags as well. One of the next things to do is attach the connector that we'll use to go from this thinner tubing into the syringe and filter housing. So the white tubing is going to go right inside the soft tubing here. Push it all the way in so it touches the connector, and then zip tie. Make sure that zip tie is good and tight, have a good seal. You might even put 2 zip ties on there. After you've got your tube secured, next thing to do is to take pictures of your site. You want to take 4 pictures, one facing downstream where you can see sediments and vegetation and water, one looking upstream, also seeing water, sediments, and vegetation, one up close where you can see sediments, and then one looking across the river to see the broader landscape. You want to have a tape measure out to 30 centimeters in these pictures so you get a sense of scale. So I'll take these now. I'll show you what they look like on the video. So that was a downstream shot. For the sediment picture, you're able to see that tape measure and get close enough so you can get a sense of the texture of the sediments. And we'll head downstream. Take that picture, and looking across the river, another set of pictures you'll take is every time you sample, you want to take a picture towards the push points from the same location, same height, same everything, so we can get a time course of what the water stage is doing throughout the study. Before you take your photo from your stable monitoring location looking out to the push point, make sure you take a picture of the hard copy data sheet, zoomed in to the time point associated with the picture that you're about to take. You want to record the date and the start time. This way we can associate the time with the picture that's being taken. A tripod here, that's what we'd recommend using if you have one available. Take your picture and hopefully just leave your tripod set up for the next shot later. Okay, one of the next things you want to do before you start sampling is take the depth of the water column at the middle push point. Take your measuring tape, get a measurement, make sure you record that on the data sheet, and only do this if it's clearly accessible. In some systems, if the stage fluctuations are too large, your push point may not be accessible, in which point don't take the depth measurement. You're also going to take temperature at 50% of the water column at the middle push point. Take that measurement, again record it on the data sheet. If the water is too deep to access the middle push point, take a temperature measurement wherever you can along the shoreline. After you've taken your depth and temperature measurements, next step is to measure pH. So take your pH strip, just dip it right in the river. Wait about 10 seconds for the color to develop and compare it against the color sheet. Then find your value and record the pH on the hard copy data sheet. When you're ready to sample, record the sampling time and your name on the hard copy data sheet. And put on a new pair of nitrile gloves to minimize contamination. Next thing you're going to do is get a new syringe and open that up. Take the syringe out without touching the outlet of the syringe. Attach it to the three-way valve. Just twists on. Now this is a three-way valve, so in this point you want the off pointing to this outlet here. We're going to sample the surface water first. So you're going to start pulling. First you're just going to get air. You got to keep moving the three-way valve. So you're pulling from the tube, and then you're expelling that air. Switch it back and keep going. Now we're starting to get some water. Let the tube fill up. Let the syringe fill up. And keep going. Now we're going to expel this water. We're going to flush the syringe 3 times before we take a sample. Expel that water. That's the last flush. The next volume we collect is going to be for an actual sample. After you've got your volume full of sample water, after flushing 3 times, you're going to locate the filter that has the needle attached to it. You're going to pull that out. Careful not to touch the inlet of the filter. Screw that onto the lure lock of the 3-way valve. Release the protective sleeve over the needle and just let that drop. Now push a few mils through the filter housing. Next thing you're going to do is find your clear vial. These have a flip top. You can just pop it off. The septum is there. Please don't touch the septum. Needle goes in through the septum. Now you're ready to collect a sample. These vials you want to push in, it's approximately 20 milliliters. You don't want to go more than halfway full. Samples are going to be frozen. If they're more than halfway full, the sample will burst in the freezer. So that's about right. Sample then, make sure don't set this down in the dirt, but take the sample and place it in a cooler of wet or blue ice. Next thing you want to do is find an amber vial, and same procedure. You're going to pop the top, needle goes in, you're going to push in about 20 mils, so it's about halfway full. It's better to go a little bit less than half than over half. It's not quite enough. About right. After you've collected your sample into the first amber vial, locate the other 2 amber vials and repeat the procedure, filling each about half full. Make sure you use the same filter for all 4 vials. And make sure to record the unique sample ID on the hard copy data sheet so we can correspond the sampling time and location with the unique ID. All the samples need to go into blue or wet ice. Before putting the amber vials into the cooler, make sure you gently shake them back and forth. The amber vials have a very small amount of concentrated acid, so this allows it to mix to acidify the sample. Okay, now we're going to go over the protocol for filling the Stervex filter with RNA later. That's the preservative that maintains the nucleic acid. We're filming this in the lab, but make sure this is done in the field. You need to do it right after you finish sampling. So for the surface water, you'll sample and you'll immediately do the RNA later for the surface water Stervex. Then you'll move on to the pushpoint sampling, do that sampling, and then preserve that filter using this protocol. So one thing that's really important is the Stervex is going to have a sample ID just like the vials. And you want to make sure you record the Stervex sample IDs on the hard copy data sheet. There's one for the surface water and one for the push points. So This is what it should look like in the field, three-way valve setup. First step here is to get the water out of the Steravex. To do this, just unhook the syringe, fill it with air, goes back onto the three-way valve. Then you want to remove the needle. And the goal here is to push as much water out as you can. It might take a few tries. You can refill the syringe a few times if you like. Get as much water out as possible. The next step is to seal off the bottom of the Steravex. For the video, we're using a closed valve, but we'll be sending along small lure lock caps. So you're going to take your cap, put it on to the outlet of the Steravex, screw it on there. Next thing you want to do is get a new 3 ml syringe, open that up, don't touch the outlet, get a new needle, open that, don't touch the inlet, put that together, take the cap off. The vial we'll be sending along has RNA later in it. This is the preservative, so you can invert the vial, so the septum's on the bottom, go right through the septum, and then pull 3 mils, just fill the syringe, it's about 3 milliliters. Now, I'm going to get the needle off the end of the syringe. And here, now you're going to take the Steravex off of the three-way valve. Connect that on. Now the key here is to have this going in this direction. So the syringe is pointing into the Steravex, pointing down towards the ground. If you do it this way, you can easily push the RNA later in. You'll feel some resistance. Once you've filled it, you can take the syringe off. And again, we'll be sending caps along, but as for demonstration, here, you then put the top cap on. With the top and bottom cap, the Steravex is sealed. Next step is to put it into Whirlpack. So it'll fit better with just caps. The valves are a little bit long. You'll take your filter, seal up the Whirlpack, put it into blue ice. And you want to make sure there's no water coming into the Whirlpack bag. So keep it sealed. And make sure you don't freeze them with the RNA later. That will cause them to burst. So you're just going to keep them cool. Blue ice in the field, refrigerator in the lab. So for the push point sampling, you'll have the same arrangement. You'll pull and flush, pull water into the syringe, flush it 3 times. There are a couple things that are different. First is when you fill the syringe with water, you're going to want to pull it slowly, about 1 milliliter per second. So it should be about a minute to fill a 60 milliliter syringe. That's important to make sure we're pulling pore water and not just sucking surface water down the edge of the push point. You will then squirt water after the 3rd flush. You'll squirt that onto the pH paper and take a pH measurement just as you did for the river, recording it on the hard copy data sheet. After you've got the water in there and your filter is attached, and remember this is a new filter, not the same one we're using for the surface water. We're using one filter for all 3 push points. Once you get the filter attached and you've purged the syringe just as you did for the surface water, then take the cap off. As before, push a few mils through the syringe just to flush it. Next thing you're going to do is put a few mils into the clear vial. Now here, we're going to do a composite sample. So we're going to get 1 half-full clear vial from a small volume collectively across all 3 push points. So our first push point here, we're going to come in, we've already purged the line and everything. I'm going to sample a few mils into the clear vial. So, do a little bit more than that. Just going to eyeball this. A few mils, it's about right. Again, we'll get 3 samples to come up to halfway full. And then put this into the wet ice. Next thing we're going to do is fill an amber vial half full. So each push point is going to get a half full amber vial that is specific to that push point. Amber vial, get the top off, come in, and go half full. touch more than that, but not much. And then before you put it in the ice, make sure you invert it 3 times. The reason is there's acid inside this vial, so we're acidifying the sample right away. Next thing you want to do is cover up the needle, and we're going to change the needle. And the reason is that we put the needle into a vial with acid, and we don't want to get acid into the clear vial. So we're going to swap off to a new needle. Make sure not to touch the inlet of the needle or the outlet of the filter. So get that on there. Now at this point you can take the syringe off of the three-way valve. You can discard the excess water. So the point is, don't be having the stuff laying around like this just in the dirt and whatnot. That will contaminate samples. So, but in any case, the next move here is, this will be your next push point. You're going to take the same syringe that you're using before, attach it on, and then you're going to flush it 3 times, just as we've been doing. So because you're going to flush it 3 times, that's why it's okay to use the same syringe. Remember, you want to go slow. I'm going a little bit too fast here, just to keep things moving in the video. But remember, about a minute to fill up this syringe. Once you've filled it, flushed it 3 times, now you're ready. And so here, you can take the filter off the previous push point, attach it on here. Remember, you've already got a new needle on there. And remove, make sure you flush it well. A few mils through there. The inside volume of this is about 3 milliliters. You want to push, if you push 10 mils through, you've done a pretty good job of flushing the system. Now, as I mentioned, we want to get a composite sample into this clear vial. So, next thing we're going to do is put a few more mils into the clear vial. We don't want to get to halfway yet. We want to leave some space for that third sample, the third push point, to fill it up to halfway. And then you're on to the next amber vial, halfway full. Make sure you invert it 3 times to mix in the acid, and repeat the process to finish off the third push point. After you finish sampling a given point in time, make sure your metadata sheet's completely filled out, and then repeat the process every 3 hours. After you've finished all your sampling, you want to take down the site. First thing you want to do is remove your sandbags, empty those, and then measure the length of tubing between your push point and where you are sampling. You want to get to the nearest centimeter with that. Then when you install or remove your push point from the subsurface, you want to take the stock off, and then there's usually sediment inside of the push point. The support rod is really critical, and it's very finely milled to just barely fit inside the push point. So you want to wash it out pretty good. Give it a pretty good rinse, dump it out a few times, and then gently insert the support rod back in. If you get any resistance, it feels any kind of gritty, wash out the push point again. Depending on your substrate, your push point might also be a little bit bent at the end. You can try to straighten that out by pushing the support rod in and gently straightening the tip of the push point. The last step before you leave the field site is to take a picture of your hard copy metadata sheet, which will be uploaded as part of your metadata. The other thing to do is to make sure you've uploaded your metadata. That'll be in 2 forms. One will be a form associated with uploading your pictures, and the other will be a spreadsheet that contains the actual data.